Hey everyone, this is Russ from Retro Gamecore. So the other day I made a video about the Steam Deck and I talked about loading Batocera onto an SD card. Well, today I'm going to show you a proof of concept with doing that with a USB flash drive. Now essentially we're going to put the operating system directly onto this flash drive along with all of our games and settings and everything. And this is going to allow us to plug it into any other Windows PC and turn it into a gaming system just like that. And that's the beauty and the power of Batocera. Now obviously this in itself is not an emulation device. You're going to have to plug it into a computer, so I'm calling the concept a BYOPC. But the strength lies in the fact that you can plug this into any Windows PC and automatically have all of your games and settings and save games and everything else that are portable with you. So you could put it on a laptop while you're on travel, or if you had a small PC hooked up to your TV in the living room, and then also if you had a computer in your home office. All of these are going to be able to run just fine using the flash drive. And Batocera can support all the way up through PS3, Xbox, and Wii U games. And there are various skins and themes to choose from to give yourself a unique user experience. So without any further delay, let's jump into this concept. So obviously the first thing you're going to need is a flash drive. So I picked up this 500GB SanDisk flash drive for about $50. You can obviously go smaller or bigger and the price is going to vary, but I thought this was a happy medium. I also recommend that you have a USB pluggable keyboard to work with. Now any keyboard will do, but I really like this one here, which has a mouse integrated into it. It's nice and small and compact, and it has a rechargeable battery inside, and on top of that it has a wireless USB dongle. So essentially you can just plug this into any computer and you can use this as your keyboard and your mouse. It costs $20 on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the video description below. You're not going to need the keyboard all the time, but it is going to be an important part of first setting up everything. Additionally, you're going to want to have a gamepad. For this exercise in particular, I was using the 8BitDo Pro 2, and I did that for a couple reasons. One is because it has analog triggers, which is really helpful when you're playing GameCube games. But then also it supports wired gameplay, so you can just plug in USB-C directly into the computer and just start playing without having to set up Bluetooth or anything else like that. But the reality is that any controller is going to work fine. Now, just to give you a baseline of the gameplay we're going to be seeing later in this video, these are the specs of my computer here. Long story short, I have a Ryzen 7 3700X, and then I have a RX 590 video card. I put together this computer about a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic started. I would say this is a middle-of-the-road gaming PC, and you definitely don't need something as powerful as this, but this is what I'm working with here in this video. Okay, so now let's actually install Batocera on our flash drive. You're just going to want to go to the Batocera website, which I'll have linked below, and you're going to see various platforms that are supported by the operating system. We're just going to download the regular x64 Windows version. It's going to be a couple gigs, just go ahead and download that. And then we're going to use an app called Balena Etcher to flash this onto the USB drive. In the first window, just go ahead and select Flash from File, find that file and hit Open. Then go select Target and then put in your USB drive. And then finally just hit Flash. It's going to ask you, do you really want to do this? And you say, yeah man, I want to do it. Now this can be done on an SD card or an external hard drive. I'm only doing it on a flash drive just because it's so small and portable, but you could use any of those if you'd like. When it's done, all these windows are going to pop up. Just go ahead and ignore all of these. Just hit cancel for everything until it's gone. And now we're going to actually boot into that flash drive. Keep it plugged into your computer. In your Windows Start menu, type in Recovery Options. And then within here, you'll see a section that says Advanced Startup Restart Now. Then push that button, and you should see something that says Use a Device. And within here, find the UEFI Removable Device. That's your USB flash drive. Go ahead and select that. Now, if you don't see that option in the recovery options, don't worry about it. I'll show you how to access that in a different way. Anyway, once it boots into Batocera, it's going to resize your flash drive partitions, and then it's going to boot right into the interface. Now, unfortunately, I didn't capture that initial install, so this is after I've already loaded some games on here. But essentially, this is how the process is going to go. Now, let's say you didn't have the ability to pick the USB flash drive when you're in the recovery options. So what you want to do is power down your computer, and then power it up. And then as soon as it powers up using your USB keyboard, you're going to want to hit the boot menu button. That's usually the F12 button, but sometimes it's Escape or even F2. Just keep tapping that, and then it'll boot into your computer's BIOS, and it'll give you the option to pick a boot device. Now within here, you should be able to see the UEFI USB partition. Go ahead and select that, and that's going to boot into Batocera. And here we are, booting right back into the interface. So those are the two ways that you can boot into Batocera from your computer. Okay, so this is what the interface is going to look like. You're going to have the ability to load all your games up. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'd kind of know how this all works. It's an emulation station front end. But one of the things that makes Batocera unique is that it has its own file system, and you can load all your games through this. Now the way you do this is you press F1 on your keyboard, and that'll bring up this file system here. And not only will you be able to see the stuff on the flash drive, but you'll be able to see everything else that's already in the computer. So for example, here are the hard drives connected to my PC. So I can access where I store my games on my computer, and then copy all of them, and then go into the ROMs folder of the flash drive and then paste them in. So I'm essentially transferring files from the internal hard drive on my PC onto this flash drive. And because there's not a lot of overhead here with the operating system, it actually moves over very quickly. And so I found this is the easiest way to move files over. Now, if your game files are not attached to your actual computer, say they're on an external hard drive, that's fine too. You just plug the external hard drive into the same computer, and Batocera is going to find that as well. But essentially, that's all you're going to have to do. Now let's say you're using one computer for Batocera and you have a separate computer like a Mac or something else like that, which has all your game files. Well, that's also an easy fix too, because you can access that over the Wi-Fi. So once Batocera is connected to the Wi-Fi, on Mac you just go into Finder and then connect to it. And on Windows, you go into a file explorer, you just type / Batocera, and then register as a guest when you log in, and then you'll have access to your file structure of the flash drive. So then you can move everything over at will. Now another thing that's important with a lot of these games are the BIOS files. And in Batocera, you can actually go in and see all the missing BIOS files under the game settings. So here you can make note of all the missing BIOS files. Now unfortunately I can't say where to get the BIOS files, but I would recommend maybe Googling the words Batocera and BIOS and see what you find. And you move these files over just like you do the game files, you just move them into the BIOS folder instead. Okay, so now that we've moved over a bunch of our game files and the BIOS files, let's actually start up a game and see what it's like. And I've been showing one certain game recently a lot in my videos, so let's try a completely different one here, and one I've never shown on this channel before. Now, starting up this random game here, you can see two things. One, it has these nice bezels that are around the screen itself, and also that the image is a little bit soft. Now, fixing the soft image is actually fairly easy. We're going to do that in the Batocera menu. We're going to go into Game Settings, and then we're going to select Smooth Games and change that to Off. That's going to turn off by linear filtering. And as you can see here with this random game again, everything looks nice and crisp and pixelated. So in general, from a system-wide perspective, I recommend turning off Smooth Games. Now you can also change things by platform. So what you do is you go into the platform, you press the Select button, and then you select Advanced System Settings. And within here you can make all sorts of changes. You can change out the emulator, you could change your graphics backend to Vulkan, or you can even change the resolution. We're going to set ours to 4x for PS1 games. Now you can also do this by game. What you do is you hold down the A button, and then you select Advanced Game Options. And here you'll have the same options as the PS1 options, but they'll be specific to whatever game you just selected. So if you have a certain joystick you want to use or resolution you want to use on a certain game, that's how you would adjust it. So here's Crash Bandicoot running at a 4x resolution, and you can see it's running at 60 frames per second solid. So you can also go into RetroArch. So you hold down Select, press the A button to get into the quick menu. And within here, we can change the options on the fly as well. So here I've changed the options to 16 resolution. And as you can see here, it's still running at 60 frames per second. And that's one of the cool things about running these emulators directly on a PC, is that the PCs are much more powerful than your retro handheld systems, or even an Android TV box like the Super Console X. And on top of that, a lot of the standalone emulators are already integrated into Batocera. So in the applications section, I'm going to pull up the Wii U emulator. And within here, you can make adjustments to your settings as well. So if you're familiar with Cemu, you could go in and you can add your graphics packs, and then change the resolution on each of the games as you're going through them. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You have that emulation station interface, but the powerful backend of the standalone emulators as well. Now I know I'm just breezing through a lot of this setup stuff, and that's because it's very in-depth and it would take me many videos to put all of this together. Instead, what I recommend is go back to the Batocera website and check out their Wikipedia page. Within here you can find a systems page, and then you can go directly to a lot of these systems and read exactly what is required in terms of file types, and then just general setup as well. Now say you don't like to read written guides and you'd rather watch videos about it, I actually would recommend this other channel here. It's called Batocera Nation. And this is a relatively new channel, but they do really good in-depth guides that will walk you through how to set up various systems on Batocera. And this guy is mostly using Windows PCs to do it, so it really goes hand in hand with this video here. To be honest, I used a lot of these videos to set up my own settings because things like 3DS, PS3, and Xbox are kind of a pain to set up the first time around, but this guy makes it really easy. So I recommend that you subscribe to this channel, and I'll leave a link to it below. Now, a couple other things before we get into gameplay. You can also go into the updates and downloads and download a bunch of different themes as well. And the Batocera themes are really high quality. A lot of these are made for high resolution displays, so they're going to look really good on your computer monitor, or if your computer's hooked up to a TV, all of these things are going to look really nice. So if you do install Batocera onto a flash drive, I do recommend that you also go through and install all of these themes as well, because there's going to be something on here you're going to like. Now on top of that, you're going to want to scrape all of your artwork and things like that, but it's a pretty intuitive process. And again, if you run into any problems, I recommend going to the Batocera wiki page or the Batocera Nation YouTube channel. Okay, so now that I've set everything up on my home PC here, let's take that flash drive out and we're going to put it into a different computer. So this is my son's computer here. It's just a Dell Optiplex. I put a couple extra things inside of it. Basically, I watched some ETA Prime videos and I just set everything up. It's not a powerhouse by any means, but let's see what happens when I plug in my flash drive. So here I am plugging it in, and then I'm pressing F12 on the USB keyboard. And here's the boot menu here. And obviously it's going to look different depending on the BIOS of the computer that you use, but I'm picking the USB flash drive and it's booting into Batocera. And just like that, all of my settings, everything that I've set up, now works on this PC. Now obviously this PC is not as powerful as the one that I have, so I'm going to have to adjust the resolution in certain games. But regardless, you can see that GameCube games are playing at 1080p right here on my son's computer. And that's kind of the power of having this USB flash drive. You can put it into any computer, and all of a sudden it'll turn it into a standalone gaming system. As soon as I showed my son this, he started asking for that flash drive, because it allows him to access all of these games without having to install anything onto his little computer. So now the two of us are fighting over who gets to use the flash drive. Okay, so I recorded a ton of gameplay in setting all of this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to integrate some music here into the background, and we're just going to kind of relax and listen to some music and watch me play through a lot of these systems. And I'll pop in every once in a while to kind of talk about my experience with each of these, but in general, I basically maxed the resolution to 1080p on most of these systems. And for the most part, I also tried to stick with the default emulator that Batocera recommends. Now, like I mentioned before, setting up 3DS was kind of a pain, so I definitely recommend watching the Batocera Nation videos about that. But these can also be upscaled, which I did to 1080p, and they still ran at full speed. When it comes to 16-bit systems like Super Nintendo and Genesis, I really didn't do much other than keep it on the default settings, but everything played just perfectly as expected. When it comes to arcade games, for the most part, everything played really well. It's important you have the matching ROM set with the MAME versions that are available in Batocera, but other than that, some of the very hard to play games like Killer Instinct and Tekken just played fine. In that same kind of vein, Nintendo 64 was perfect. I upscaled everything to 1080p, and there wasn't a single moment of slowdown. Same thing with the Nintendo GameCube, I upscaled everything to 1080p, and even the hardest to run games played just fine. Now, Wii games also played well. The only issue with these is a lot of them aren't compatible with a regular gamepad, but those that are work well. Now, Wii U is one of my favorite systems to emulate. There's just a great catalog here, and it's very easy to upscale everything to 1080p and still have great performance. So moving over to Sega Saturn played really well, and I kept all these at the native resolution. I really like the blocky look of Saturn games. Now when it came to Dreamcast, I did upscale everything to 1080p, and it still played flawlessly. Even the hardest games like NBA 2K1 still did really well. Okay, moving over to PSP, I kept everything at a 4x upscale here, but you could definitely max it out higher if you'd like. And I found that when you upscale to 4x like this, it's hard to remember that this is a handheld system, it looks so good. Even God of War played fine. So PS2 also plays really well. One of the things I love about Batocera is that it makes configuring the settings much more intuitive and easier than having to use some of the native emulators. And the PS2 emulator is a perfect example. This one's kind of a pain to set up, but Batocera makes it much easier than the regular interface. And these are all upscaled to 1080p as well. Now there were some games that had issues. For example, the Jak and Daxter games, for some reason had this weird polygon thing going on. And I bet you there's a fix for that in the settings somewhere, but at least initially it does look a little weird. Now PS3 also works on Batocera. As you can see here, I'm playing Call of Duty 4, and when you're in the tutorial and in a closed environment, everything works really well. But when you get into an open environment like this, the game lags. And again, this might be something you could fix in the settings, but by default, this is something you're going to have to mess with. Now some of the easier games to play, like PSN games, they play just fine. And additionally, the original Xbox can also play on this too. And here I am playing some Xbox games at native resolution without making any adjustments to the settings, and they're running flawlessly. This was really impressive. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. I really wanted to show off this proof of concept here, and the fact that you can just take a USB flash drive, and with the help of a keyboard as well as a gamepad, you can be well on your way to turning any PC into a gaming machine. Now this is by no means a new concept. Batocera's been around for a while. But I don't know, it's something about the fact that this little flash drive on its own as a portable system is really appealing to me. Because I know that if I buy a new computer down the line, or if I'm traveling over to a friend's house, or if I have like a work computer that I don't want to install anything on, this is a perfect solution for that. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this something you plan on doing for your computer as well? I'd be really interested to hear what other ideas you have for a system like this. As always, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and we will see you next time. Happy gaming!